This is Bill Pulte, Trump's director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, or FHFA. Now, if you don't know what the FHFA is, and you probably do, but if you don't know, don't worry, you're not alone. It was created in the wake of the 2008 housing crisis to help regulate the mortgage market. It's a very important regulatory agency and is supposed to be focused on big picture stuff, like making sure the home mortgage industry doesn't collapse again, given the impact that could have on millions and millions of Americans. But that's really how Trump and his handpicked directors see it. I mean, Trump gave that important job to a 37-year-old Nepo baby whose grandfather founded one of the biggest real estate development companies in the country. Since taking that job, Bill Pulte has made a few MAGA-friendly changes at the housing agency he runs. I mean, did a lot of things that probably Trump and Doge World likes. He fired more than 100 employees. He put a Doge staffer and one of Donald Trump Jr.'s business partners on the board of a major government-run mortgage lender. And he even tried to change federal housing rules to let people secure mortgages using cryptocurrencies, which, of course, is a notoriously volatile thing to do, in the industry, I mean. But mostly, Bill Pulte seems to spend the bulk of his time doing things that have precisely zero, I mean, absolutely nothing to do with his actual job. For instance, he has spent a considerable amount of his time publicly attacking Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. In July alone, Pulte posted or reposted more than 100 missives criticizing the Fed chair. That is in no way in the purview of the FHFA director. No way. No, not in the purview at all. And he even reportedly gave Trump a draft letter firing Jerome Powell, which Trump has, at least for now, declined to use. But we'll see. But that hasn't stopped Bill Pulte from going after Trump's perceived enemies in other ways. I mean, in just the last 2 months, he has used his position in government to accuse several of them of mortgage fraud. Last month, Pulte referred claims of mortgage fraud to the Justice Department about two of Trump's very favorite targets, Senator Adam Schiff and New York Attorney General Letitia James, claiming they listed multiple properties as their primary residences. And needless to say, selectively investigating the president's enemies for potential mortgage fraud is not what the FHFA director is supposed to be spending his time doing, to state the obvious. I mean, as one financial regulations expert told the Washington Post, those investigations would typically be brought by the FHFA's inspector general, not the agency chief. This is like the county sheriff who has his deputies pull over his political opponents every time they drive on the parkway. It's a very astute example, just to stick it in your head. But if you ask Bill Pulte, he says that this is exactly what he was put in the job to do.
This is right in the bullseye of what my job is. I promised before the Senate, before I was confirmed by the Senate, that I would investigate mortgage fraud, and I'm not going to be intimidated by anyone. I'm not going to be intimidated by the media, the politicians. They can say whatever they want. If it's a Republican who's committing mortgage fraud, we're going to look at it. If it's a Democrat, we're going to look at it.
Okay. All right, Bill Pulte. If it's a Republican that's committing mortgage fraud, we're going to look at it. If it's a Democrat, we're going to look at it. That's what he has to say to his critics. Just one big problem with that. Here's the headline from the Associated Press just last month. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, a Senate hopeful, claimed 3 homes as his primary residence. The AP found that Texas's Republican Attorney General and Trump major loyalist Ken Paxton appears to have committed the exact type of mortgage fraud that Bill Pulte is accusing Trump's perceived enemies of committing. But so far, there is no evidence at all that Bill Pulte is investigating Ken Paxton. Of course there's not. So it's pretty obvious that none of this is actually about pursuing justice or going after mortgage fraud. It's about helping Donald Trump target the people who stand in his way. And that's become abundantly clear since last night, when Donald Trump announced he would try to fire Lisa Cook, a sitting member of the Federal Reserve Board. And what reason did he give for taking that extraordinary step? If you guessed mortgage fraud, you'd be right. As with his other political targets, Trump cited yet another investigation from the same guy, Bill Pulte's agency, as the pretext for ousting Cook from the Fed. But this goes way beyond anything we have seen before. It's not just about the firing of federal board governor, which is a big deal. First of all, she was the first black woman in history to serve in that role. She has an extensive years of experience qualifying her for the job. And also, it's never happened before. That's bad enough. But this is something bigger. This is part of a larger pattern of Trump attempting to grab power. power that no president is supposed to have. I mean, the Federal Reserve is independent. That means it doesn't have to answer to Trump or to any president for that matter, no matter what their political party is. And that means Trump wants to crush its independence. He wants interest rates to rise and fall at his command so he can juice the economy whenever he wants to for short-term political gain. That's what this is about, no matter how damaging to the economy that might be in the long run. And he doesn't want anyone to be in a position to tell him he can't do that. And it's not just the economy where he is attempting to grab power no president is supposed to have. Trump is sending the military into American cities. He's directing the Department of Justice to investigate his enemies. He's ignoring court orders and firing people across the federal government to get rid of anyone who might try to stop him. No matter what he says or claims, the American people don't want Trump to be a dictator. They don't. But that doesn't matter to him because he wants to be one anyway. Joining me now, as promised, is Senator Elizabeth Warren. And I just made the point that there's a bigger issue at play here, which is a massive power grab. But I think for people who are trying to understand what the FHFA is, the importance of it, and it's not been around that long, I just outlined a little bit about the guy who's in charge here, Bill Pulte, and what he is trying to do, how he's using his power and authority to really go after Trump's enemies. Explain to us your concerns about that and what the agency really is supposed to be doing, because it's not this.
So it's exactly like you said. What this agency is really about is in the aftermath of the crash in 2008, is this agency is put in place to make sure that we don't end up with banks and mortgage lenders that engage in massive mortgage fraud that runs the risk of bringing down the whole economy. And understand, it's not that Mr. Pulte is actually using his power and authority. What he's doing is he's using access to individual records of Donald Trump's perceived enemies. And he just seems to be going through the enemies list to see, can he find any place in a complex mortgage document where he alleges someone has had something that doesn't entirely add up. And look, that's all we've got. We've got allegations from a man who's also been making allegations against Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed, who's been making allegations about the remodeling of the Fed. In other words, someone who's out there trying to engage in a political hit job. And this just happens to be the data that he has access to, and he's going to see if he can make claims, and that's all they are at this point, claims that someone has violated the law. And maybe that will help Donald Trump get rid of that person and continue in his efforts to take control over the Fed.
Yeah, I mean, this is Lisa Cook is obviously his latest victim, shall I say, Bill Pulte's victim, which is only 24 hours old. Powell's term as chair is up next year. There's another vacancy, of course, as well. Trump has nominated someone. He clearly wants to do this so that he can control people and what happens with interest rates. But what do you make of it, and what concerns do you have?
So understand, you showed at the beginning of the program that cabinet meeting with all those people sitting around the table telling Donald Trump just how wonderful he is, bowing down to Donald Trump. But remember, there's a reality outside the cabinet room. And that reality is our economy. And it's 330 million Americans. And what those people are seeing is that what Donald Trump promised when he ran for office, remember, number one thing he promised was he would reduce costs for American families on day one. Those were his words, on day one. And now here we are, 230 days in, and the cost of groceries is up, the cost of utilities is up, the cost of housing is up, the cost of back-to-school shoes is up, the cost of backpacks is up, the cost of baby strollers is up. Costs are up for families. And that's a real problem because everybody sitting around that cabinet table can suck up to Donald Trump. But the American people are experiencing an economy of higher costs at a time when Donald Trump himself said he got elected on the promise to lower costs. Look, Donald Trump needs a scapegoat and a diversion, and that's what he's doing with the Fed. This is the single biggest assault on the Federal Reserve's independence in American history, but it's also Donald Trump's effort when the economy is slipping sideways, when costs are going up, to say it's their fault and not Donald Trump's fault.